Hi guys, this is Jake at Canadian Cutting Edge. It's another Fixed Blade Friday, and it's been a couple months, but we've got another chef's knife today. This is an 8-inch chef's knife, or is it a 7-inch? I'll have to double check that now. Sometimes if I go off the top of my head, I don't quite remember. But this is a SHAN, hopefully I'm pronouncing that closely to what it is, chef's knife. And it's a nice light German steel chef's knife made in China. 4116 stainless steel, which is a very popular cooking chef's knife steel for knives. And there's a lot of sporting knives, folding knives, and fixed blades that also have 4116 steel on them. And so that's what we're going to take a look at today. This is Paca wood, which is a synthetic wood. And it's a nice, good size chef's knife, and we're going to see how well it performs. So stay tuned. The first thing that we're going to cover on this is we're going to cover the dimensions and everything so that we can get that all out of the way. First off, it's a knife that weighs 186 grams. That's 6.55 ounces. So a total of 6.5 ounces is not bad at all for a chef's knife for cutting away. It's quite comfortable for a pinch grip. Comes nice and narrow down towards the handle. So we've got a thickness here, and it gets slightly thicker here, and then it starts narrowing down. Same thing for the depth. It's narrow and it keeps getting thicker to about just before the halfway point, and then it sort of keeps the same depth, but it gives a little bit of a curve back. So we've got a little bit of a shape like this, and then it bends back down back here before we get to the pommel. It's a full tang blade, so there is a piece of steel from this tang, and the steel goes all the way through, and then they've welded the pommel on the back. So that's how that's made. We've got a full flat grind here, as you can clearly see. There's no heel at all on this knife. It's just a thin, full flat grind knife. So all the dimensions for you. The cutting edge is 21.3 centimeters. That's 8 3/4 inches. Blade length, and I'm counting the blade length from the tip of the knife all the way to the top of the plunge right there. That's what I'm counting for the length of the blade. 22.2 centimeters. That's 8 3/4 inches. The blade thickness is 2 1/4 millimeters. That's 0.0885 inches. The blade depth, so the spine of the blade to the cutting edge back here at the widest part, 4.38 centimeters, 1.725 inches, so just under 1 3/4 inches. And the thickness behind the grind. So we've got a grind along here. I was kind of silly on this thing. I did a sharpening job before I had taken the measurement of the thickness behind the grind. Usually I like to see what it is done by the factory, although it's going to be very, very, very close to what the factory had itself before I took it. And so I measure right in the area where we're going to do probably the majority of our cutting, which is about 2/3 of the way up, right there. So thickness behind the grind right there is 0.3 millimeters. That's 0.0115 inches. And that's it for the blade. Now the handle length, so from the top of the plunge here to the end of the pommel, is 12.2 centimeters, 4.8 inches. The handle thickness, and that's at the thickest point right about here, 2.33 centimeters, that's 0.917 inches, so just under 1 inch thick. And then the depth is this way, is 2.73, just over 1 inch right here. So we've got a bit of a, what's the oval name for oval? Oval is the name for oval. We've got a basic oval shape handle right here. So it's a bit thinner than it is tall. Not very much so, but enough so that you can get a good sense of, just by feel, you know which way the knife is up and down, so you won't accidentally have it this way. You know, you like to have your feel accurate with what it really is. And so just by feel, you know that it's up and down like this. Unless you've got it upside down, but you can feel that right here because this is coming up then. So no problem. Next is the entire length of the knife. That's the last measurement. The entire length is 34.3 centimeters, 13.5 inches. How much does this knife cost? I bought it at Amazon.com. They do ship to Canada. If you're in the United States, it's $19 US for this knife. I think that's a very good price for 4116 steel on a full tang and pack of wood. Pack of wood is really good because it handles washing and stuff very well, so you can wash this thing and not worry about it sucking up too much water or anything. It's a synthetic material. If you're going to have it shipped to Canada, you're paying the $19 plus $11 shipping and handling. They put in there about $4 for duty and taxes and stuff, and that should be about all that you would need, so it should come to you at that price. I didn't realize they had the Canadian shipping option on here, so I had it shipped to my sister along with some other things that I purchased, and then she mailed it to me, so I just paid $19 American to get this knife, plus the shipping that I paid my sister. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the details before we do a little bit of cutting on it. Special features on this. Well, there isn't any really special features. It's just a regular chef's knife style. You got that sort of drop point on the end, a nice belly. The radius is a really nice gentle radius. So you've got a blade that rocks up and down a little bit. Let me give you a flat edge to show you. So looking pretty much straight up and down, we've got, let's go down here so you can see it. The knife rocks to cut on the whole thing, but you don't have to go very high to cut with the tip. It's not a huge rocking motion. It's not a huge angle, so that's a good thing that way. There's no metal on the heel here, so you never have to worry about, after sharpening this thing, 10, 15 times, about having a heel, some steel here. If you've got too much heel steel, you end up having a knife that sits like this, and you can only cut, from part way down the blade and to the tip, and you can't use a big section of the blade. So I don't like having a heel on the steel. And if you do have a heel, you just have to make sure you grind that down along with sharpening. So what are the pros and cons that I have else that I want to talk about this knife? Well, the handle's comfortable. I talked about how that's oval. That's a really good thing. No heel on the blade, full tang, nice radius, and a nice full flat grind on a reasonable steel. What are the cons for this thing? Well, one of the obvious cons when I picked it up right away, this pommel is a little bit larger all the way around than the paca wood is. So that's not a really good thing because, your hand will catch on there. If you slide it up, it just catches on there all the time. It's big enough all the way around to easily catch a thumbnail. So that's not a great thing. I should give you another picture of the shape of this handle, and you can see it well if you look at the end of the pommel. Let me turn it this way so you can see off the edge of this table. Now you're just looking down at the floor. You can see my legs for my frame, for the legs for my lights. So that's the shape of the handle. It's, sort of that broader, and then it comes down and it's narrower, kind of like an egg shape right there. And there's the name SHAN. So we're going to take a good close look at this. We're going to go take this up into our kitchen, and I'm going to cut up some stuff to see what we can find in the kitchen and show you how well this thing performs. Now, the cutting that I have done on this, we have used it a little bit in the kitchen. I think it performs quite well. And so let's demonstrate some of that. So I've washed my hands and the knife, and I've got a couple items of various consistencies here. We've got a cucumber, and let's cut the end of that off, and cut the end of that off there. And let's see how well I can slice with these things. Now remember, I've got a cutting edge that's less than 1/3 of a millimeter thick, so that's nice and thin behind that edge. And so it's very easy, although I'm not a trained chef by any stretch of the imagination. It's very easy to cut very thin slices if you want to. Or closer up to here for a little more control. Very, very easy to cut very well. Nice and smooth. I guess I should have been cutting all the way through, but I wasn't. I am not a trained chef by any stretch of the imagination. And so I don't have that kind of skill set. Oh, and I didn't even cut the bottom of it off. That's not very good. Now I've got them all separated out. So, you can see that it cuts cucumber quite well. And I'm very fortunate that Bandit loves cucumber. So those, oh, he heard his name and he heard cucumber. He knows the name cucumber and he can smell it very, very well. And I'm trying to cut at different spots on the blade here. Now, I have terrible control of a knife, so it's not about how well I can control this knife. It's more about how well the knife actually cuts, and I think it cuts just great. Now, let me give this to my little doggy. There you go, buddy. Oh, he loves cucumbers. Okay, and remember, you slide with the back of the knife. Oh, I hit my tripod stand there. Carrot. Okay, what do we got for a carrot? Cut the end of that off. Okay, so let's see what kind of control I can get here. This is a fresh cucumber. That's why we got that much noise. When it cuts through, it kind of, gives that last tiny little bit. And it cuts very well, easy to cut, very thin slices. I think it's doing a great job. And it cut all the way through. It didn't break part way through. That's what I like to see on something that's a hard root vegetable. If you're cutting through it, you want to see if, when you're most of the way through, if it just breaks off. If it breaks off, that means your blade's too dull and it's just forcing it through like a wedge and then causes it to crack. But if it is cut all the way through, so totally smooth all the way through, that means it's cutting properly all the way through the thing. And this is cutting quite well. So that's going good. Whoa, didn't follow the rule. Slide with the spine. We've got a pepper here. So what kind of control do we have for cutting that? It's kind of a wilty pepper. Okay, that's not too good. And so let's just cut through it like this. It's a big chef's knife for cutting something this small, but can have a lot of control of it. That's good. As you can clearly see, those of you, if there's anybody watching who's anything of an experienced amateur, and certainly if you're a professional chef, which I doubt you're watching my channel, and you're watching a knife that's a $19 knife if you're a professional chef. I seriously doubt it. But we'll see who we have here, what we're doing. Okay. It's cutting very well. This is a somewhat wilted pepper here. Nice clean cuts. See if I can get some skin off nice and thin. Not that you skin a pepper, it just shows a little bit about the control you can have with the blade. Yeah, very sharp blade. Performs very, very well. Well, thanks so much for watching my video here. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I've got a link for this below if you want to get one. And thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Remember, everybody, always cut towards your kitchen mate. Cut towards your chum, not your thumb.